Today on The State of Us, get your dream job in 2022, and relationships might actually thrive in tough times. Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined, of course, today by the one and only senior resident historian at True Chat, an educator of 35 years, and commonly known as your friendly redneck liberal, Mr. Lance L. Jackson. We're going to look at why 2022 is the year that you're going to get your dream job, according to a headline in the Wall Street Journal. And we're also going to examine how real-life relationship advice has come from pandemic times, and specifically how adversity actually can make relationships stronger. So we've got quite a number of things to discuss, but of course we couldn't begin that conversation, Lance, if we don't have a word to talk about today. Expand our listeners' vocabulary, right?
Well, we're going to go with the real life relationship advice for pandemic times and the focus of this article, and we're going to talk about being with your betrothed, betrothed. As an adjective, betrothed means engaged to be married. As a noun, it is the person to whom one is betrothed. But it's all about relationships. Kind of, it's the month of February, and we kind of focus
Love
on
is
that.
in the air. Capitalism is stirring.
We kind of focus on that, and so. How you doing in those relationships, those friendships? And maybe you're married to your job, right? You're married to your work. So you can also use it that way. Are you betrothed to your job, or are you still looking for that job that you can be betrothed to?
Coming out strong today. Didn't like losing the last time. Gotta really whack me over the head early. Hopefully,
just trying to
I
relate
got stars going the whole time and can't focus.
Trying to relate it to the articles today, folks. Trying to relate it to the articles.
Sure, it's all about winning. Let's be honest. While it might be tempting, it could be tempting to jump at the next opportunity to become betrothed. You see, with a job, you could make a lateral move for a 10% raise. Career coaches and compensation consultants agree that workers probably shouldn't do that, and instead they need to seize this advantageous moment. Don't get betrothed too soon. They recommend job hunters use their leverage, be hyper-specific about what they are looking for, and do their homework about the current environment for their chosen field. Specifically, we've got 5 things to talk about, Lance, to hopefully make sure that you don't prematurely become betrothed with new opportunities. So, first one, Lance, right? Zero in on what you hate about your job. Interesting place to start. Figure out what you don't like.
Yeah, well, I'm not betrothed to this one at all.
Oh, okay.
I don't like. We're gonna betroth every sentence now, are we? Everybody's like, are we just gonna talk about the word of the day, or we're gonna talk about the articles? I don't like this. I don't like this one because it uses the word hate. That's a strong word, right?
What do you not like about your job, or what could be better?
Well, and what I like, the thing they say that I think that I took from it that's a positive in a sense is get specific and don't say, well, I don't like anything about it. That's not really helping you look for something else. What is it specifically? You probably, it's, as I like to say, it's never, never, and never always. So from that point, I think that's a good one, that we need to all sit down and not talk in generalities, but be specific about those things that we would like in a new job.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing they point out is figure out what you complain about a lot, right? And then also take the next step and figure out what would remedy that complaint. What would fix this issue? I complain about it, so how could it be better?
No, the old adage, don't just complain about, okay, you don't like the way we're doing it. What's your suggestion to fix it?
Right.
Well, I don't have one.
Yeah.
Well, then don't complain. That kind of talk and argument, self-talk and argument with ourselves. It's like, okay, I don't like this, but what would, so if somebody then confronts you and says, well, what would you like us to do about it? Oh, I don't know. Well, that doesn't, I'm really not going to listen to your complaints because you're not telling me what would make it better for you. So,
well, and if you're looking for a new job, you don't want to have the same complaints about a new job. So part of it can be hard when you're reading job descriptions to figure out, am I going to have the same complaint? And I think the point here, right, is that if you can figure out what would make it so that you don't have that complaint, then you can look for whatever that positive thing is someplace else. Because to look for things that a job doesn't have is harder than to look for the things that it says it has, because most job descriptions don't have a lot about, expect to complain about these things. They have expect that you will do X, Y, Z, and work in this type of environment. So number 2, Lance, stay focused, but don't wear yourself out. Setting parameters to keep your job hunt manageable increases the chances that you'll find, pursue, and land a role that is truly a good fit. And I think that one's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people who go on that, and I think they get very overwhelmed because there are, especially right now, there are so many places you can apply. How many resumes do I have to be, or how many applications do I need to be filling out every day, and how much time do I need to be spending on this? And you don't want it to become, if you become disenfranchised with the search, then you're probably going to quit the search.
Well, I think this is a good life skill for us to have because it says, basically what it's talking about is doing something is better than doing nothing, because we have a tendency, I think, in our busy lives, we get overwhelmed with what we have to do. And we're like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to sit down, pick up a book and grab something to drink, and I'm just not going to do anything today. Whereas, well, you know what? I've got dishes, laundry, vacuuming, make the bed, go to the grocery store. Okay, we'll get 1 or 2 of those things done. We don't look at that as a win. Oh, I had 8 things on my list today and only got 2 things done. And we say, oh, I'm defeated. And then we just quit. And tomorrow I'm not going to do anything because, I can't get it all done. Instead of looking at it and saying, hey, I got 2 things done. That's good. My list is a little shorter now. And this is what it's saying. It ends with the quote, if I can't send out 20 resumes today, I'm going to send out none. And they say, well, if you can't send out 20, can you just send 1? At least 1 is doing.
Well, maybe I can do that.
You're working towards that. Right. You set this unrealistic goal of getting out, 20 resumes, and you only get out 10. Well, I'm a failure. I'm a failure at life. I'm a failure at a resume. I'll never get a job. When I get an interview, you don't want to hire me because I'm a failure. So you set yourself up for it. So instead, just peck away at it, right? Just keep everything in perspective.
The next thing is that you have leverage. Figure out how much. The Great Resignation is real, but conditions vary significantly between industries, regions, and occupations. Career coaches are advising job hunters to research the hiring climate they will personally be entering. One of those researchers says people who have worked in a very similar job with a very similar industry serving a similar customer or product, if you fit all those boxes, you have tons of leverage. But for example, right, if you were working in a factory and now you want to go be an accountant, doesn't mean you can't, but your leverage obviously is not going to be as great as where if you were managing the factory floor and you want to move to another factory and manage a different factory floor, you have a lot of leverage because you have industry experience, you've done the job before, right? There's no walking in and being like, why should I work here? That doesn't work no matter how much leverage you think you have. And if it does, it's going to work in a place that you don't want to work and people that you don't want to work for.
Well, when I read this, to me, what's important here, the key is self-evaluating. I think sometimes we overestimate or underestimate how valuable we really are and what skills we really have. And I think so the key here is when you're self-evaluating, be fair to yourself. But by being fair to yourself, that also means, well, I do have some shortcomings, and maybe some of these issues are caused by me. And maybe some parts of this job I need to work on to be better. But at the same time, don't sell yourself short. And that is, no, I do get along with people pretty well, and I do work hard, and I'm willing to put in extra work and extra time. And so, you have to balance that because again, people are like, oh, I deserve that raise. I deserve a good job because I'm this. And I'm like, No, you work about 45 minutes out of every hour, and you're the first one to go on lunch break, and you're the last one to get back, and you're standing at the time clock 5 minutes before it's time to leave. You're not really being true to who you are. Yes, you work really hard when you work, but the rest of us have a bigger output than you because we work not maybe as hard, but we're steadier, So I think that you just have to be careful here, and I think this is a self-evaluation piece, when you're trying to figure out what you do have to offer a new company.
Well, and it helps you be realistic, obviously, too, about if I am going to get a new job, am I staying, this builds on some of the other earlier points, right, of what don't you like about your job? Because if you don't like certain things that are inherent to the industry, then it's important to know, well, I'm probably switching industries. And if I'm doing that, I have less leverage, right? Doesn't mean I don't have any leverage, but it does mean understanding that it's going to be harder, right? So maybe, for example, instead of sending one resume, you need to send two. It's just this whole thing of, you have to be more sensitive to, if you're the expert with 20 years experience and education in the field and you're going to a similar job with a similar company, that's a very different scenario than going into a new industry that you've never worked in and that you don't have any experience in and you don't have any education in. Doesn't mean they won't hire you, because as we talked about, right, there's, for example, a lot of companies that are hiring teachers right now. They're totally different industry that they're going into, jobs they've never worked, a setting they've never been in. It's not that it can't happen. It's just that you have to be, again, realistic, I think is the word. And that's kind of the focus of this, is figure out how much leverage you have, because you don't want to undersell, right? And you don't want to accept pay that's too low because you're worth more than that. But you also don't want to assume that you have all this leverage and then never get any of the jobs, because people are like, man, that person's arrogant. They think they just deserve the world, and that's not who we're interested in hiring, So workers do have the leverage right now, but there's still something to be said for, you need to be humble, especially when you're in a position of strength, because nobody likes a know-it-all bully. So we got to talk about what the two other suggestions are for why 2022 is going to be the year you get your dream job and how to do it. And then we're going to look at how relationships under strain through the pandemic have actually gotten stronger. There's a lot to talk about, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. We're missing something on the list, Lance, I think. And if I'm going to be betrothed to a new job, I want to make sure that it's doing something that I like doing. And I liked the first point about figuring out what you don't like. I guess maybe there's a built-in assumption there that you're going to take time to figure out what you do like. But it's more so maybe even, well, what do I like at my current job? But not just that. I would go beyond that and say, well, what do you enjoy spending time on? What types of things, because I think
it's wonderful if you can get paid for doing something that you like to do, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that seems like
that would be the epitome of a dream job, right?
Exactly.
You're going to pay me to read books? You're going to pay me to look at baseball cards? Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm in.
I can do that.
And you're going to pay me six figures to do that? I'm all over it.
Yeah.
No, good point. That's why I think that,
especially if you're switching industries,
of a dream job. Sure.
If you're staying in the same industry, it's probably not as important because you're probably looking at some kind of similar job. But if you're changing industries, right, or you're really changing the nature of the type of job that you're going to do, then I think, if you're willing to make that change, you ought to be asking, so that hopefully you find something you like, what is it that you want to do? Or maybe, and here's the other thing, right? What does the job accomplish? Because sometimes it's not so much about the task that you do you really enjoy. It's about the product or the service that you create as a result that you enjoy. The next one, no surprise to folks, shouldn't be anyway. Number 4, Lance, connection. Those connections, they matter. They matter. Even in a hot hiring market, jobs are still found more frequently through networking than submitting dozens of applications, career coaches, recruiters, and human resource executives say.
Well, and I've talked to people and they say, well, that's not fair. And just because you know somebody, you get a job, or because you worked with so-and-so, you can help me get a job. I mean, I should just be able to walk in off the street and do this, blah, blah. Okay, whether you like it or not, the article points out, this is the way it is. You need to set a good example and make a good impression on them, because you never know when you could walk through that door and there that person is that you saw at lunch or in the grocery store or whatever, and they saw you be nice or do something nice, or you did something nice for them, and it's like, oh, wow, okay. I mean, that's part of networking as well. We're working with young people all the time. They're saying, well, I can't work there. These people don't like me. Or, well, I work for that person at another job and they don't think I work very hard or whatever. Okay, there you go. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And you're like, well, that's not fair. I've changed now. Okay, but people remember those kinds of things. Just as well as if you were, I remember when I was a paper boy and I would go and collect and everything. Well, I ended up working for two people that were on my paper route because they enjoyed the service that I provided them as a paper boy. And so they stopped me and, asked me, would you like to work at my company and do this?
Because it's not all bad, right? I mean, there is, as people, connections matter to us, all of us, in different ways, some more than others, but they're an important component of life. It's how we live. It's how we operate. And in the job hunt, I think, remember, it's that whole, let's try to look at it from the other side here. If somebody said to you, you need to go hire for this position, and you have the choice between a stranger or somebody that you know who you think would do a good job, one has inherently less risk. I mean, just, from a smart business decision.
And you're spending time and effort of your own and of the company's money to hire this person. You want to make it as smooth a transition as possible.
Yep. And there's always that built-in component of when somebody new is hired, you have to get to know them, right? Everybody has to get familiar with who are they, what do they care about, how do they operate? And if it's somebody that you know, who you have a little bit of a relationship with, some of that initial angst internally is removed. So there's a lot of reasons that we do that. It's not just to provide favoritism or to give people a leg up that don't deserve it. There is also an inherent benefit to hiring people who, for example, maybe they do a good job, right? Because if you're the person hiring and it's like, well, I know that person's worked for this company for that long and I've known them for this long and they seem, that company seems really happy with them, those are things that are beneficial versus Lance comes in and I don't know what company he worked for. I've never met him before and he says he's done a good job, but how do I really know that to be true? And I can call his references and this and that, but again, steps, time, energy, to Lance's point of that all requires effort and effort requires time, which is money. So all those many things go into, I think, the connection component. Number 5, I like this one. Get a new job without quitting. What do we mean, Lance?
Well,
you mean that if I am betrothed to my current job, I don't necessarily have to leave. I could just get a new job with the same employer? That's
pretty much it. I mean,
okay.
If everybody above you is leaving, or if there's a department you want to work in and they have a shortage, then you can apply within the company that you're working and switch jobs. And maybe it's one that you would enjoy more. Maybe you're working in, accounting and you would rather work in human resources, and some opportunities open up in human resources. You don't have to leave the company. You can keep your 401k and your insurance plan and not have to learn all these new terminologies and all these new people and find a good place to park and what bus do you have to take to get to your new job. No, you can keep going to the same building, but just switch departments and get in and start doing the things that you think would be enjoyable to you or a new challenge. Many times we don't necessarily want a new job. We just want different challenges. It's, work has become boring. It's become routine. And so staying within the company, you get all the advantages of knowing all the things that you already know about the company, but yet you can get new experiences by working in another department or with another group of people. Sometimes you have to let people know that you're interested, right? You're like, oh, well, that job's open and they're not offering it to me. Well, did you tell them you'd be interested in it? Because maybe if you'd say that, they would say, well, we never thought of you there, but yeah, that's a good idea. And you want to do that? Well, we can probably make that happen.
If you're happy, there is value in being the one who stays and doubles down, said Miss Pollock, who warns workers she talks to not to job hunt simply because it is a trend. Don't expect your organization to automatically reward you for staying. You need to be vocal and direct, requesting time for a stay conversation, the inverse of an exit interview, to discuss your prospects at the company and highlight your contributions. Gee, I'm happy with where I'm at, but everybody's looking for jobs. Maybe I should look. Or maybe I should I'm happy here. I like this company. I like my job, but I want more. Let's sit down and talk about what it's going to take to keep me.
Pretty simple stuff.
All right. Relationship advice, Lance. Relationship advice. You got stories galore for us.
Stay with the one you're betrothed.
Okay. You think so? It's worked out for you.
It has, yes.
Okay, most days.
Lo these many years. Well, the most important one, that the reason why we're still together is we've learned how to give each other space. Just because, you care about someone and you've given your heart to them and you're betrothed to them doesn't mean that you both don't need some space. And it's very interesting here. A gentleman says he and his wife of 36 years learned the importance of giving each other space during their first year of marriage because, they were together all the time and the closeness caused a strain. And the gentleman said he wanted some time alone and his wife thought, oh my gosh, that means he doesn't care about me. And, they had to talk it out. And no, I'm not mad at you. I love you, but I need time by myself. And so, now it's gone to where he'll mow the yard while she's planting flowers. So they're together, both working outside, but they're doing their own things, And as he says, the old quote, absence really does make the heart grow fonder. I think that's a very important thing for young couples or couples who are struggling to understand that sometimes time away makes you realize what your betrothed does for you and what they bring to the relationship, because you get so into the daily routine of whether it's both going to work and one of you does the dishes and the other one does the laundry, or you do this and they do that, or they bathe the kids and you read them the bedtime story, or whatever your relationship is, and you just start taking each other for granted.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too is, and you touched on it briefly, was the whole concept of people, again, just human nature. It can be difficult to see the forest for the trees when you're living a situation every day, right? And the space component is, and it doesn't have to be big things. I mean, sure, it could be, we're going to spend a week apart or whatever. I mean, it could be something like that, or a month, but it could also just be, we're going to spend an hour or two apart, or I'm going to go do this thing and you're not necessarily coming with me to do it. And often I find that when I do those things, I come back and I'm like, man, I sure am glad I'm in this relationship, not because I didn't enjoy what I was doing, but I observed things while I was out alone that it's like, yeah, I don't really want any part of that, or man, those two people, they don't look very happy, or, all these little things that you don't generally see because you're caught down on the floor of the forest and you can only see the couple of trees that are next to you. You get up there and you look at the whole picture and it's like, man, I am pretty lucky, things are pretty good. I really shouldn't complain so much. It can be hard to have perspective when you're there every minute of every day with your betrothed, but it's a lot easier to gain that when you have a little bit of time to breathe, to assess, and all for the best. So what else? Number one was give space, but there's two more things that are important. Two more things. What are they and how will they make your relationship all the better? To find out, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. According to recent research from the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University, 74% of betrothed couples surveyed felt the pandemic strengthened their marriage, and 82% of the betrothed said it made them feel more committed. So high percentages. I mean, surprisingly, right? Because I think a lot of people assume, oh man, the pandemic probably, things were terrible. But apparently many relationships, in fact, were thriving. Betrothed couples were finding the value in having to spend time together, having to spend time apart, and I think the biggest thing, overcoming adversity together. I honestly, not to claim that, I'm the expert on relationships, because there are definitely people out there that would argue the the opposite of that. Sure, they could be located. So, but in the last about 7 years.
And if you're out there, let us know. Send us an email at podcast@thestateofus.org and tell us how good Justin is in a relationship.
Yes. If you were once one of the betrothed and are no longer, I'm sure that we would enjoy hearing from
I want to
you.
hear those stories. I need some blackmail material.
I'm sure. I think the next one, Lance, is a big one. If there is anything that my, 7 years of this ongoing relationship marriage that I am in has taught me, it is to assume positive intent. Oh my God, I cannot tell you how many times in life, not just in marriage, the world would be a better place if people didn't immediately assume that what somebody else was doing was because they're evil, or because they're bad, or because they're after the worst. It's easy to do because we are geared that way as people. But my, how many fights, Lance, could have been avoided by simply not assuming the wrong thing?
So true. So very true.
Can we call up your betrothed and see?
Well, and it goes on. You start to learn that. It's like this couple's been married 45 years, and he talks about how he likes everything neat and everything's run on time, and she doesn't put a high priority on those things. And as they were spending more time with each other, they were fighting over whether or not the kitchen was clean enough or the closets were too cluttered. And he said, I just had to step back and remind myself, my wife's not irritating me on purpose. We just have different ways of doing things. And, the more time, and that is so true. That is so true.
Is it true?
It's so very true.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
Well, and there's, again, why are these people so old? I guess us old people find out some things, right? We've been in our relationships. But there's a 85-year-old doctor. He said, I found out that if you listen rather than interjecting your own opinion, you will be more successful.
Yes.
Wow. Just step
that one gets me in trouble.
Back and listen, okay?
Yeah.
You don't just let them talk, and then you find out a whole lot of things.
Have you experienced that one firsthand?
So much so. Yes, because it's amazing sometimes when you say something, how it can be taken differently than what you meant. And then it causes you a problem that didn't even exist when you started talking. So, I'm not saying that you are a deaf mute, but it's at the same time, when you listen, I think what they're trying to say there is then you find out how your betrothed feels, and then that allows you then to understand things. Because I used to think, oh my gosh, my betrothed was just doing stuff to make me mad, just because. It's like, really? And come to find out, she didn't know those things were upsetting to me. Yep. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, wow. So now, after almost 40 years of marriage, and years of dating, so we've been a couple for almost 45 years. She goes, well, I didn't. No, I said, that's why I'm not mad. I joke with her. That's why I'm here. If I thought you were doing that on purpose, I'd have been gone a long time ago. That's just who you are, and it's okay. I'll get over it, and we'll be fine. I was talking to this young person, and they said I was making a really good point in this argument we were having, and all of a sudden, my betrothed just hung up on me, and I'm like, really? Well, no. They called me back and said their phone went dead, and it took them a few minutes to get it charged back up, and they called me back. But I was upset for 5 minutes because I thought, well, here I am making my really good point, and you just hang up on me? How dare you hang up on me in the middle of, and I just got angrier and angrier and angrier. And then they called back and said, well, my phone went dead. I'm sorry. What were you saying? And it's like, and I had to deal with all this anger that I had built up in 5 minutes because I thought they had hung up on me, but you didn't know. You assumed, right?
You assumed.
And so this point is assume positive, right? Assume the positive and you avoid a lot of pitfalls.
Yes. Yep.
Great advice.
Well, and I think for some of us out there, I'm sure some of you can relate, when your betrothed is telling you about a problem they're having, there is a desire to help them address the problem. And it has been a challenge for me to remember that sometimes it's not about trying to fix the problem. It is about sharing it and getting it out there. And in fact, that is part of fixing it, which is, it's a difficult thing to understand because for those of us that want to like, well, here's all these things we could do about it. Let's do this, this, and this. And it's like, oh my gosh, shut up. You know, I was just trying to tell you what was going on. I needed to vent. And the venting was in fact the thing I needed in order to feel better. And you have circumvented that by taking over the conversation and telling me all the ways that I could make it better.
There's a phrase for that. It's when I earned my Klondike bar. I don't know if you remember that. There was a commercial on TV.
The Klondike bar.
Yes. When my wife comes home from work, my betrothed comes in and she's complaining about it. I just sit, and when she gets done, she looks at me and she goes, okay, you earned a Klondike bar. I said, I think I earned 2 today.
I did a really good job.
But I'm like you. I learned the hard way. You know, it's like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen.
Yes.
So now I just said, listen. And then she'll look at me. She goes, what, do you have anything to say? I said, oh, was that a question that I'm supposed to answer? I was just thinking I had to, no, I wanted to, okay, well, that's fine.
Yep. So now that we're clear that I'm supposed to.
I make sure I get permission to give an answer because sometimes it's not a question that I'm supposed to answer. And I just earned my Klondike bar.
That's a good system too. Practicing that positive reinforcement.
Right.
Good job. Here's your Klondike bars. Thank you.
I'll listen again tomorrow.
That's right. I can do that.
Ooh, it's a double chocolate Klondike bar. Chocolate ice cream covered by chocolate.
Can you still get Klondike bars? Is that?
No, I think you can get Klondike bars. I'm seeing it's got a bear on the side. Yeah, you can get them.
Where do you?
I eat them all summer.
Okay. Where do you buy them?
Local store.
Oh, okay. We now know who Lance's true betrothed is. The
Klondike bar. So that's how I became a better listener.
And possibly the last and maybe the most important, kind of the build on these other two, right? So we had, just as a reminder, we had give space, assume positive intent, and last but definitely not least, make time to be positive.
Huh. You mean positive seems to be the key word here. You think we like to spend time with people who are positive? Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting here. The theme is I like to be around people who are positive. If you're a negative person, I don't like to be around you. Wow. I mean, honestly, folks, quit being facetious here or sarcastic. Think about that, right? It's that age-old question. You have that glass of water and it's filled halfway. Is the glass half empty or is it the glass half full? Correct answer is yes. But which type of person would you rather be? The person who sees the glass half full or the person who sees the glass half empty? Who would you want to be betrothed to? Well, we all want to be around positive people. Positive people make us feel better. Negative people bring us down. Are you the negative person in your relationship? If you are, change it and try to become more positive and do things in a more positive way and create a more positive environment, and you would be amazed at how your betrothed would return the favor.
And positive doesn't have to be, I think this is important too, it doesn't have to be a false veil over difficulty either, because I think some people mistakenly assume that that's what it is. But part of, I think, what the article is highlighting is making time to be positive. What does that mean? Well, for me, I think of in my relationship, that means going on walks together. Why? Because we leave our phones behind. The world is away. We walk, we talk, we get any struggles out. We share that stuff. We're getting the air, right? And then we come back and it's like, oh man, I feel so much better now, right? I mean, everything is better now. I've been out in nature, outside. I shared anything that was on my mind. And that was a positive experience, right? So it doesn't just have to be, well, I'm going to just pretend to be happy, Sometimes that is what it is, but it can also be do things together that are positive things, right? That lead to a result that everybody is happy with. And I think that's important too.
Very much so.
Or in Lance's case, outside mowing and somebody else, your betrothed, doing an activity of theirs, and everybody feel good that, we've made progress today on keeping our home the way we want it to be. And, all of those are all those types of things, right?
But but I like to build a fire, in the fire pit. And so you sit around and I make her come outside and I do. I have to, encourage her, come on outside. It's all right. Turn the TV off, put your phone down, and we just sit around the fire. And then it's like, it changes the whole mood of the evening and of her personally, because all of a sudden she's away from all the stressors and it's just relaxing. And she becomes the person that I fell in love with in the beginning, because we get so worked up about work and about other relationships, we forget what we have and what brought us together in the first place. And to your point, sometimes you just need to get away from everything else together to understand, oh yeah, this is why we became a couple in the first place.
Speaking of why we're doing things, Lance, why are we doing this thing, The State of Us?
Well, because we have a mission, and our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And let's face it, if everybody was more positive and if everybody got along with each other better, we could solve a lot of the problems in the world. So whereas we usually talk about, climate change and politics, but this is important. If those people could apply these concepts that we've talked about today in business and in personal relationships, then we could solve some of these other problems. And that's why we had this conversation today. And when you're talking to people, keep that stuff in mind. And if they say, you're a much more positive person these days, say, well, yes, I was listening to this show. And they go, well, what's that? And tell them, well, it's called The State of Us. And you can find them on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us can be heard Tuesdays and Thursdays, first thing in the morning as a podcast, and on the weekends on radio stations across the country. Today, I believe I tried to keep score, but honestly, it got pretty complicated. The synopsis, I would say, post-game commentary, is that it was a vigorous competition. There was a lot. Lance pulled away early, really came out swinging hard, and then Justin brought it through in the second half, and in the third period, it was just a hot mess, and nobody's really sure what all took place.
There was a lot of offense today. It's usually not.
That's right.
It's usually a defensive struggle.
Yeah,
but there was a lot of offense today.
There was a lot of offense, so much so that everybody's eyes glazed over. So, for The State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to our producer Bradley Butch, and thank you all, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.